Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. Well, the Trump White House has been caught in the worst, most embarrassing, most dangerous security breach of our lifetime. The details, I'm sure you've heard some of them, are almost too ridiculous to be true. Trump's cabinet accidentally texted war plans, like imminent details, to the editor-in-chief of one of America's most prominent magazines. This was not an anonymous leak or a hack by a foreign adversary, but rather an act of sheer, unfettered, Olympian incompetence. Members of Trump's cabinet, including Secretary of Defense and the Vice President, all hopped on a group chat on Signal. It's a commercial encrypted messaging platform anyone can download from the App Store to discuss detailed, clearly classified plans about a military strike in Yemen. Trump's national security advisor accidentally included, why? We still don't know, Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic magazine, on the text chain. We've since learned that one member of the chat, and get this one, Steve Witkoff, that's Trump's real estate buddy who is somehow now the special envoy to the Middle East and also handling negotiations with Russia, was almost certainly physically in Moscow with his phony phone while participating in the text convo, possibly even in the Kremlin, which adds an entire new layer of just insane security concerns. As does the fact that, as a former White House official told Politico, many of the participants in the conversation were likely using their personal cell phones, since generally that encrypted text act Signal is not allowed on government devices. Quote, their personal phones are all hackable. Yeah, no kidding. And it's highly likely that foreign intelligence services are sitting on their phones, watching them type the shit out, the former White House official warned. Of course, that is apparently of little consequence to Trump's cabinet. They are group texting classified stuff because it defies the rules, because no one can hold them accountable, because they're a bunch of incompetence, because they want to avoid the Freedom of Information Act requests. They want to avoid the prying eyes of responsible federal officials. Remember what happened when Trump called Zelensky in his first term, right? They want to avoid Inspector General reports, right? They're hiding it from others, just not foreign adversaries. Today, Donald Trump defended the use of the commercial app used to text chain, Signal, as well as his national security advisor, Michael Waltz, who, again, got everyone together and added Goldberg.
I don't know anything about Signal. I wasn't involved in this, but I just heard about it. And I hear it's used by a lot of groups. It's used by the media a lot. It's used by a lot of the military, and I think successfully. But sometimes somebody can get onto those things. That's one of the prices you pay when you're not sitting in the Situation Room. I always say you have to learn from every experience. I think it was very unfair the way they attacked Michael. He's a good person. The person that was on just happens to be a sleazebag, so maybe that's just coincidence.
Despite the apparent vote of confidence from the president, Waltz did have to go on TV in the last hour to defend himself.
You know, Laura, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but of all the people out there, somehow this guy who has lied about the president, who has lied to Gold Star families, lied to their attorneys, and gone to Russia hoax, gone to just all kinds of links to lie and smear the president of the United States. And he's the one that somehow gets on somebody's contact and then gets sucked into this group.
First of all, Goldberg didn't lie about any of the things that Waltz says he lied about. Second of all, the somehow, like he somehow got sucked in this group, is doing a lot of work here. But bracketing the slander of the guy that Waltz himself apparently added to the chat, if he's really the cretin you say, doesn't it only make it worse that he's being texted war plans? Doesn't it make it worse that you're using Signal, which apparently is so insecure that this scumbag, as you describe him, just hopped in? I mean, think about it for like 10 seconds. Give it 10 seconds of thought.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Simone Sanders Townsend, and we begin tonight with the continued fallout from the Signal group chat security leak. This is after journalist Jeffrey Goldberg revealed that he was accidentally included in a group chat about plans to bomb Houthis in Yemen. Today, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard and CIA Director John Ratcliffe clashed with Democrats at a Senate Intelligence Committee hearing that was about oversight. Take a listen.
You were not TG on this group chat?
I'm not going to get into the specifics.
So you
of
refuse
the
to acknowledge whether you were on this group chat?
Senator, I'm not going to get into the
Why
specifics.
are you going to get into the specifics? Is it because it's all classified?
Because this is currently under review by the National Security
Because it's
Council.
all classified? If it's not classified, share the text now.
They're talking about the timing of U.S. airstrikes, correct?
Yes.
Yes, and therefore the timing of sending U.S. air crews into hostile airspace, correct?
Yes.
And therefore the time period during which enemy air defenses could target U.S. air crews flying in enemy airspace, correct?
I don't know that.
You do know that.
Were you using your private phone or a public phone for the Signal discussions?
I won't speak to this because it's under review by the National Security Council.
If you're making the statement, the Signal is a secure channel.
No. Can I answer that? It is
I've got a series
end-to-end decryption. So to finish,
I understand encryption.
it is permissible to use to communicate and coordinate for work purposes, provided, Senator, that any decisions that are made are also recorded through formal channels.
CIA Director Ratcliffe confirmed that he was part of a leaked group chat that discussed attacking the Houthis, literally the actual plans for the attack. He also testified that the use of Signal for communications is a practice that preceded the Trump administration and that the Biden administration had authorized it. I cannot tell you how crazy that is as someone that used to work in the Biden administration. I can tell you it's not true. He also said that no classified information was shared on the chat. So the story goes. As for President Trump, well, he is standing by Mike Waltz, the national security advisor who added the Atlantic's editor-in-chief to the Signal group chat, saying in a phone interview today with NBC News, quote, Michael Waltz has learned a lesson and he's a good man. Late today, The Atlantic released a statement saying attempts to disparage and discredit The Atlantic, our editor, and our reporting follow an obvious playbook by elected officials and others in power who are hostile to journalists and the First Amendment rights of all Americans. Our journalists are continuing to fearlessly and independently report the truth in the public interest. Joining me now is Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell of California, former Republican Congressman Denver Riggleman, and Neera Tanden, who is the president and CEO of the Center for American Progress. She served as domestic policy advisor to President Biden. And Neera, I'm actually going to start with you. Was it a policy of the Biden administration to use Signal to officially communicate?
Absolutely not. In fact, we were informed you cannot use Signal to communicate anything that was of government purpose, and definitely not classified material. So that was a lie.
Sounds like a lie. Congressman Swalwell, we have heard from a number of individuals today. We saw that very explosive hearing, and I have more sound I'm going to play from it. But we also heard from Leader Hakeem Jeffries today, and he wrote a letter to Donald Trump about Pete Hegseth, saying the Secretary of Defense should be fired immediately. What is the conversation inside the House Democratic Caucus tonight?
Simone, it's been a long day at the Capitol for me. Are you telling me that Pete Hegseth is still the Secretary of Defense and he's not been fired?
That would be seem to be the case. I'm checking my phone feverishly, though.
That's insane. This guy, by the way, they want to fire everyone at the CIA and FBI, and they want to replace it with this. I mean, Hegseth should be gone. Frankly, everyone on that group chat who didn't say, hey, who is this weird number that isn't responding, they should never have access to classified information. They also should all be told to turn over who their Signal contacts are so that we can understand what other exposure that we have, because I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that these morons have been doing this on other operations and that we are probably exposed in other ways.
Let's play Senator Warner and Senator Cotton on whether the Signal messages were classified. Take a listen.
They testified, is my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that there's no intelligence community classified information. Is that correct?
That's
Director
correct.
Ratcliffe, is that correct? Director Gabbard?
Yes, Chairman.
Well, again,
That's not correct. She said repeatedly there was nothing classified, period.
right, period. You can't have it both. And again, we'll see. I cannot believe this is not going to come out. And if it's not classified, again, we'd ask you to give it to the public today. I'm sure one of your aides back there probably got it on paper. If you got it here, it's not classified. Stand by your position.
That was Senator Jack Reed, who was off camera noting that's not correct. She said repeatedly, there's nothing classified, period. Denver Riggleman, we have heard a lot from Democrats today. We've heard a lot from the White House today. I have not heard as much from Republicans who serve in the House or the Senate. We heard from Congressman Don Bacon of Nebraska's 2nd Congressional District, where he noted that this was out of the ordinary, and if he did this when he was serving in the armed services, he would have been fired, discharged. Where are the Republicans on this? Because I remember the emails.
Well, I think they're hiding, and Eric, I think they fired him on Signal, so I don't know if we've seen that yet. But I think what we have right now, though, is when I'm looking at Republicans, they're in hiding. And I was looking at that. Let me tell you, I was an Air Force intelligence officer. As you know, Don Bacon is a retired Air Force general. But when you look at this, we had to deal with classified data all the time. And what I find interesting is that Tulsi Gabbard was talking about the NSC was under review for these actual chains. Well, that's the DNI's purview. I don't even know if they understand when it comes to clearance adjudication or actually clearing these type of signal chats. So you're already looking at lies that are coming out of the person who's supposed to know how intelligence works. It's pretty interesting. Also, when the SecDef is on there, the SecDef has the executive authority to declassify, to release all those texts. So if they're not classified, why wouldn't you just release them? And here's the other thing. When you're using Signal, you have to invite people on there. So for some reason, and I know that we sort of know about this, Jeff Goldberg got on those chats. I've heard that, well, he allowed himself on those chats, or he shouldn't have been on those chats. So are you telling me that Signal isn't that actually secure? So everything that you're saying, if you have people like me who worked in the intelligence business, we're going to tear them apart. And I think what they need is they need staffers to go up there who's actually been in the intelligence business to write the questions for the senators so they can actually ask the proper questions so they get the proper answers. I'm to the point that I'm just so embarrassed for our country, but what we've done for our global integrity and for our reputation, I don't know how we get this back in a long, long time.
The American people are scared to death that you're really going after Social Security. Not only did my constituent not get his payment in February, they went to his bank account and tried to claw back previous payments from January and December. And then what did he do? He had to go down to the building in Seattle, the federal building that you're trying to close, and stand in line for hours and hours and hours to try to say he wasn't dead and to stop taking his money.
It was Washington State Democratic Senator Maria Cantwell today bringing a story from her home state paper to a confirmation hearing for Donald Trump's nominee to run the Social Security Administration. Senator Cantwell told that story today from the Seattle Times about this 82-year-old Washington State resident who was mistakenly declared dead by Social Security, which resulted in his benefits being taken away. He first tried to fix the problem over the phone. And then, as you heard the senator tell the committee there, he went down to the local Social Security office in person to try to sort it out. This is from the Seattle Times. Quote, "It was like a Depression-era scene," he said, with a queue 50 deep jockeying for the attentions of two tellers. The employees were kind but beleaguered. Quote, "They are so understaffed down there," he said. "They think the office is about to be closed down and they don't know where they're going to go. It feels like the agency is being gutted." After waiting for 4 hours, Mr. Johnson admits he jumped the line. He says, quote, "I saw an opening and I kind of just rushed up and told them I was listed as dead. That seemed to get their attention." One story, one town, one retired person trying to straighten out one problem with Social Security and finding a Depression-era scene when he did so. But as Donald Trump and his top campaign donor and whatever Doge is continue to hack away at the way Social Security runs as an administration, the questions about Social Security are moving beyond an anecdote here or there. The question, of course, is how much the agency can take before it just stops working altogether. This is from the Washington Post today. Quote, "Long waits, waves of calls, website crashes. Social Security is breaking down." Washington Post today provided this riveting reporting from Social Security offices around the country. Quote, in one office in central Indiana, the phone lines are jammed by 9 a.m. with hundreds of retirees, further taxing a staff of less than a dozen that is responsible for nearly 70,000 claimants across the state. The questions have become predictable. What is the U.S. DOJ service doing to Social Security? Will the office close? Will my benefits continue? The employees with no training yet on the impending changes have few answers. Quote, I hope we're going to be here, the employee tells caller after caller, but I can't guarantee anything. This is what the Post found in Baltimore, Maryland. Quote, in Baltimore, an employee who works on critical payment systems said nearly a quarter of his team is already gone or will soon be out the door. Quote, the reduction in highly skilled staff is already having consequences. The staffer said his office is supposed to complete several software updates and modernization processes that are required by law within the next few weeks and months. But with the departures, it seems increasingly likely that it will miss those deadlines. His team is also called on to fix complicated technology glitches that stop payments. But many of the experts who make those fixes are exiting. He explains that glitches have to get cleaned up on a case-by-case basis. The experts in how to do that are leaving. Quote, we will have cases that get stuck, and they're not going to be able to get fixed. People could be out of benefits for months. Again, that is from the Washington Post today, where they interviewed more than 24 people and reviewed internal documents for this report. That headline again, long waits, waves of calls, website crashes, Social Security is breaking down. Joining us now is Lisa Ryan. She's a reporter for the Washington Post. She's the lead byline on this story. Ms. Ryan, thank you very much for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Rachel.
So you and your colleagues report that, for example, among all the other things, the Social Security website in the last 10 days, or in a span of 10 days, has crashed 4 times. Managers are so short-staffed, they're doing double duty as receptionists. They're taking frontline phone calls. What would you describe the atmosphere like, the mood like, the morale like among the Social Security staffers who are left at these frontline offices?
I think the field staff is extremely anxious, and some of them are also extremely angry because, you know, they're trying to do their jobs. These are not high-paying jobs. And what's happened is that an acting commissioner appointed by Donald Trump has come in and, working with Elon Musk's DOJ team, has moved really swiftly to downsize this agency. And, you know, he wants to get rid of 7,000 employees. That's about a little over 12%. And he's well on his way to doing this. And they've offered early retirement packages, buyouts. Some people have been fired. Others have just quit because they're so frustrated. And this field staff, you know, they take these jobs. These are not easy jobs. And yet, you know, one by one, the field offices and the call centers, you know, that handle this really deteriorating phone service on the 800 line are just, you know, they're really eroding. And it's just got to be frustrating, of course, for the staff and also for all the retirees and disabled people who are trying to get service.
Some of the impact of what Trump has done to the Social Security Administration strikes me as just very granularly specific in a way that is understandable even to people who have no idea how this agency runs. A DOJ-imposed spending freeze has currently left many field offices without paper, pens, or phone headsets at the exact moment phone calls are spiking. This includes the freeze that drove all federal credit cards to a $1 limit. I mean, even if you don't take Social Security benefits yourself, even if you've never been to this kind of agency, you imagine trying to run any sort of customer service operation without having pens or paper or headsets to answer the phone. It does seem like there's I got the sense from your reporting that there's no relief in sight for those types of granular difficulties that make it just impossible to do almost anything. Is that fair?
I think that's fair. And I think, you know, we really don't know kind of what the end game is here. The nominee, President Trump's nominee to run Social Security, had a hearing today before the Senate Finance Committee. And, you know, there was a bipartisan group of senators who asked him, look, you know, you really need to address customer service issues, and you need to figure out, you know, how many cuts to the staff and to service are really acceptable, because otherwise this agency is going to grind to a halt. And he said he would address these issues. He talked about using artificial intelligence. He said, well, you know, maybe we do need to reconsider some of these cuts. But for now, you know, it's not just the staff cuts, though, Rachel. It's also policy changes that the acting commissioner in charge has made. And this is all in the name of fraud, fighting fraud. And there's a real obsession of Elon Musk and his team that fraud is a huge issue at Social Security. And you know, there is fraud. There's fraud in every federal program, and this is a really big one. So the fraud estimates seem really high in comparison, but when you think about the actual spending on benefits, it's not that considerable, less than 1%. But in the name of reducing fraud, what the Trump official who's in charge is now doing is, he's actually made it harder for a variety of people, largely people who can't use computers, to actually do things like verify their identity or make direct deposits. All this now can't be done by phone, but it has to be done by going to a field office if you can't do it online. But as we've just talked about, the field offices are just fraying. So this is sort of a weird, kind of cycle of doom that is now going on. I don't know how it's going to end.
Yeah, it's not going to end unless they take affirmative action to end it. And it does not seem, there's nothing that we've seen in any reporting that there's any intention to fix any of these things as they keep getting worse. Really vivid reporting, and I know it took a lot of shoe leather to do it. Thank you to you and your colleagues for doing this. Lisa Ryan from the Washington Post. Thanks.
Thank you for having me.
We have the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, Jeffrey Goldberg. Jeffrey, it is great to have you on the show this morning. Thank you so much for joining us. And Joe, we've been talking for the first hour about all the different questions that including of Jeffrey in this group chat on Signal raises about the strength or lack thereof of the nation's national security.
Well, and just how careful they are about it. We had heard about how we need this warrior culture, we need this macho culture inside the Pentagon and inside our military. I think we need a competent culture as well. And there was a Republican who had said that mamas and daddies weren't worried at night about this. I guarantee you, mothers and fathers whose children are deployed right now, whether it's on submarines or ships or on military bases across the world, they're very concerned. Their children may go to combat situations with people that aren't protecting their lives, that aren't protecting the security of these operations. So yeah, there needs to be a lot more talk, not only inside the White House, but oversight committees on Capitol Hill. This is something that Senator Tom Cotton from Arkansas would be concerned about in any other situation. I certainly hope he will bring it up in some hearings that he has today. So that's the backdrop. But let's bring in Jeffrey Goldberg, of course, the editor of The Atlantic. Jeffrey, for those who haven't read in yet, please give us the background. How did this happen?
It's one of those things where you just get a message request on a messaging app, and you say, yeah, sure, message me, and then the next thing you know, you're part of the PC Houthi small group messaging group on Signal with Marco Rubio and Pete Hegseth and the head of the CIA and Tulsi Gabbard and all the rest. Happens all the time.
You thought this was a scam. You thought this was a
100%.
scam at first. Like you
100%.
thought somebody was like setting you up to try to draw you into a conversation or get you to report on it. You did not believe this was actually President Trump's national security team talking about a war to come.
To be very, very clear, I did not fully believe it until Saturday the 15th. I received a text in this chain from Pete Hegseth detailing the war sequencing, the attack sequence, weapons packages, targets, all that sort of thing. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, well, and it gives us the time. It gives me the time that the attack is going to launch. And so, you know, I sat and I waited. And I figured out, you know, obviously, if there's an attack on Yemen in 2 hours, then I'm not in a kind of a disinformation bubble or in a simulation of some sort. That these are just the top national security advisors of the United States telling each other that an attack is about to commence and talking about the elements of the attack. That's what really kind of bothered me, to tell you the truth. So and then 1:45, 1:50 p.m. the attack commences, and I'm like, all right, well, that's a real signal group.
That's a real signal group. Do you tell us about your relationship with the National Security Advisor? When you received a request, was this something that surprised you? I mean, obviously, any off-the-record conversations we don't expect you to reveal, but let me just ask, was this unusual for you to receive a signal request from the National Security Advisor? I know it happens. It happens in Washington an awful lot, but from this administration to you?
Yeah, well, you know, there's the surface of what we understand in Washington about journalism and our relationship with the Trump administration, and there's the actual conversations that take place. I would say that I don't know Mike Waltz. I think I've met him twice. I think I met him at a conference or a party at a conference like a couple of years ago, and then maybe 4 or 5, I forgot when he got to Congress, but 4 or 5 years ago. I don't know him. I was happy, obviously, that Mike Waltz reached out. Obviously, I instantly thought, like we all do these days, well, if it is actually Mike Waltz who's reaching out, there's no harm in accepting a message request. All you do is get the message, and then you could see if he's trying to sell you, you know, oil shares, or says that you're late on your whatever, you know, whatever scam is being run. But it didn't strike me. It struck me as somewhat unusual because we all, and I in particular, have a somewhat contentious relationship with some people in the Trump administration, namely Trump. And so it's a little bit odd, but why wouldn't the National Security Advisor want to talk to a magazine editor, a magazine that covers national security issues?
Well, and Willie, of course, I like how Jeffrey put this for people at home wondering why you know anybody would reach out from this administration or past administrations to journalists who have written some things that they consider to be hostile. That is, in fact, how Washington works. People will go out and bark in front of a microphone and then go behind the scenes, and whether it's Signal or texting, try to explain the policy and what they're trying to push for.
Yeah, and Jeffrey, you rightly didn't publish, of course, the details of everything you saw in that exchange, so I don't expect you to repeat them here, but I do want to give you a chance to respond to what Secretary Hegseth said yesterday, effectively suggesting what you published in your piece was a hoax, going to the tried and true method and parroting sort of a poor man's version of Donald Trump, attack the source, attack the press. But then he did go on to say, nobody was talking about war plans. That's a quote from him, that nobody was talking about war plans. So if you can characterize at least what you saw in that text exchange.
Yeah, well, there's more than one text in that exchange. The CIA director came in with operational information. The National Security Advisor came in with after-battle assessments, or actually during battle assessments of the damage done, including the damage done to human targets and how those people were targeted. Again, I don't want to go into details because I don't think it's responsible to put out operational issues, and I don't understand all the sources and methods issues that are raised by this from an intelligence perspective. But no, I mean, I don't. I saw Hegseth's response yesterday. It was just unserious. Obviously, this would, by the standard vernacular understanding of what war plan means, it was, at 1:45, this is going to happen. At 1:52, this is going to happen. Then this happens. Then that happens. And then we do this. And then we do that. He's telling this group. He's letting them know probably more than they need to know. I mean, the Secretary of State, the Chief of Staff of the White House don't actually need to know which weapons packages are being deployed in what way. Obviously, right before an attack, if you're doing an after-action report, if you're sitting in the cabinet and you say, hey, Pete, how'd you pull that off? Maybe that's part of a conversation, but obviously, you know, at a certain level, you don't need to know the technical aspects. But no, there was it was what it was, and why it was so dangerous to kind of release into the wild of a commercial messaging app was these are the things that are going to happen in the immediate future, and some of these things involve obviously, you know, American pilots.
Yeah, so Jeffrey, by the way, the administration confirmed the authenticity of this exchange. The National Security Council did it as well. So we can put that to the side. That puts to rest what Secretary Hegseth tried to claim there. Were you surprised that no one else in that chat, I don't know, Marco Rubio, who chaired the Senate Intelligence Committee, Susie Wiles, who's the chief of staff, didn't say, whoa, 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 guys, not here with this stuff?
Yes. It's surprising. I think that you can become inured to believing, this is true for all of us, to believing that the chats you're in on the apps that you use are somehow more secure than they are. Obviously, Signal is pretty secure from an encryption standpoint. You lose your government secrecy if you mistakenly invite the editor of The Atlantic into the chat. Obviously, but you know, Signal, we all use Signal for good reason. But nevertheless, it is not supposed to be used by government officials to talk about national security. It is technically considered an unclassified platform, in part because it's on the other side of the wall.
Yeah, two things here. First of all, for Pete Hegseth, or other members of this administration that think they can just brush this away and point to the press and think that MAGA supporters are not deeply concerned about this, they should probably talk actually to people who voted for Donald Trump several times, as I have over the past 12 hours, who are deeply concerned about this, deeply concerned about the recklessness, who actually believe that if they screw up this badly, that yes, the lives of our men and women in uniform are put in danger. So, and for those that while Jeffrey was talking, didn't see the Brit Hume tweet, he said, for God's sake, after Pete Hegseth, again, when Pete Hegseth went out, and he might as well have just been holding a sign up saying, I think people who voted for Donald Trump are stupid, because he insulted them by denying this. Brit Hume, Fox News emeritus political analyst, said, oh, for God's sake, the administration has already confirmed the authenticity of the message. So he takes a terrible situation and embarrasses himself even more. And I'm not exactly sure why he thought he could get away with doing that when the administration already confirmed it. But Mika, I want to talk about the people really quickly, and we do need to sort through this. There are people on that group that, again, I'll just say, if they were Fox News hosts or hosts of any TV show, perhaps they weren't read in on how important this was. I will say Secretary of State Marco Rubio had to know, because he ran the Intel Committee. And this is just something, again, as a lowly member of the Armed Services Committee in the House of Representatives, when you were getting information like this, you were going upstairs, you were going into a skiff, you were in the most private of circumstances. You didn't text this stuff around on a commercial app. You just, it's been commented before, if lower level people had done this, chances are good that they could possibly face charges. And of course, against the backdrop of all of this are so many of these people who spent a year and a half attacking Hillary Clinton, saying she should be in jail because she used a private email server.
Yeah. A couple of things. The cavalier nature of the texting, along with the incredibly in-depth information about what was about to happen is staggering and raises the question, how many of these chats are out there on different national security issues? And if anybody in charge cared about our national security, they'd be launching an investigation into this right now instead of attacking the press. Like, this is an incredible breach of our own national, a self-induced breach. And also, I'm seeing the term leaked chat. This is not a leaked chat. This is a group chat that included our guest, Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, who, if it wasn't so damn serious, it would be laughable. But this group chat that included the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, that was the mistake. Somebody, by mistake, included Jeffrey on a group chat. It was not leaked to the press. The press was included.
And Mika, the press was included, but and I know the question has been asked here, Mika, but also everybody that was on that text chain. I don't know. I can't speak for other people, but I don't go into large group chains without looking at every one of the numbers and saying, okay, who am I talking to here? And that's for cable TV. These people are blindly going onto a group chat on Signal talking about where our troops are going. And I find it shocking that not one person said, okay, who's this guy with the Atlantic icon? I don't know what Jeffrey's. I don't know what Jeffrey's thing is.
It just said JG.
Well, okay, very good. Yeah. So the question is, why wouldn't somebody, Mika, in that group ask, who is JG?
Yeah, and then that's the second question. The first question is, what are they all doing on Signal with all this information?
Elon Musk wants to eliminate Social Security. Republicans know that even cutting it outright would be massively unpopular because Social Security is one of the most successful programs in the country, if not the most successful. To get around that, it appears the Trump administration is gutting the program's resources, trying to decapitate it, as Senator Elizabeth Warren pointed out in the confirmation hearing for the new Social Security commissioner today.
DOJ is considering slashing up to 50% of the Social Security Administration's workforce. That means longer lines, more errors. And for everyone who gives up or who dies before they get their benefits sorted out, those delays and errors also turn into benefit cuts. The law is to deliver the benefits that people are legally entitled to. If you don't have the staff, if you don't answer the phones, if you don't fix the mistakes, people don't get what they're legally entitled to.
Joining me now is Senator Elizabeth Warren, Democrat of Massachusetts, a member of the Finance Committee that held today's confirmation hearing. Senator, let me start with this. We've heard lots of reporting. The Washington Post had a rundown of the kind of chaos in the system, the web outages, the phones ringing off the hook, the offices understaffed. Are you hearing this just first person as a senator from constituents? Are you getting this in your offices about what is happening to this program?
Yes, we are hearing it everywhere. And understand the personal toll that we're talking about for these folks. More than half of the people who receive Social Security count on it to put groceries on the table and keep a roof over their heads. We're talking about people in their 70s, in their 80s, in their 90s, people who often have mobility challenges, people who struggle. And what's happening right now at the Social Security office is they're saying, in effect, nobody really to answer the phones. So that means you've got to find somebody to get you down to a Social Security office. Oh, whoops. They closed that Social Security office, so you've got to travel, 2 hours, 3 hours to be able to get to another Social Security office. When you get there, we're hearing about lines that are 50 people long with 2 people in the Social Security office to try to help answer questions. Office closes before people even have an opportunity to get up and ask their questions. And that is repeated over and over. And understand this, Social Security is not charity. It is not some giveaway. It is something that people earned throughout all of their working years on a promise from America that said you pay into that system, and then when you retire, you can count on those benefits solid. They will be there for you. And instead, what Elon Musk and Donald Trump, our co-presidents, are doing right now is effectively cutting the benefits that people were promised, and they are making people suffer all across this country. It is wrong.
Yeah, well, maybe some of them should find a billionaire as a son-in-law, and they can be fine. They won't have to worry about the check. That would help them out. Did you get any sense from Mr. Bisignano today that he would exert any independent control over this, that he would be responsive, or do you see him as essentially a kind of Doge stooge apparatchik?
You know, look, I raised the question directly. I pointed out the places where if you make enough cuts in service, you have effectively cut the benefits. And we all know you can't cut those Social Security benefits without coming right here to Congress. Right. Only Congress can cut the benefits. But you can backdoor cut them. And he admitted that. Yeah, that is the law. And so cutting, for example, the number of people who work at the Social Security Administration can turn out to be effectively a cut in benefits. So I said, will you at least commit to rehiring the people who've been cut? Get Social Security back up to the level at least where it was. Frankly, still wasn't enough, but at least where it was. And all we heard is blah, 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 I'll think about it. But he did not make that commitment. And why? Because he is in league with Donald Trump and with Elon Musk to cut Social Security for millions of people across this country who depend on it, the millions of people who don't have a billionaire son-in-law.
You know, one of the most unnerving stories we see in the first 2 months is the use of this agency as a sort of weaponized political tool against citizens. I want to just ask you about this because there was this story in Maine where basically the governor of Maine challenged the president on one of his executive orders. They had a kind of, testy exchange in the White House. And then subsequently, Maine found out that the program that automatically enrolls your newborn in the hospital with a Social Security number had been terminated with no notice. And you now had to go with your newborn to an office to get that Social Security number. And it looked like it was a reprisal. And now we have confirmation. The man who's running Social Security, Leland Dudek, who's sort of the Doge officer there, said he had ordered the move to cancel this after watching Janet Mills, Maine's Democratic governor, clash with Mr. Trump at the White House. I was ticked at the governor of Maine for not being real cordial to the president, Mr. Dudek said. And then he said that he owned it and he was, he was sorry and he won't do it again. But I am astonished this happened. And do you have any confidence it won't happen again?
No, I do not have confidence it won't happen again because it is the mindset of the Trump administration. And that is that this government is to be run for a handful of billionaires and people with power. And everyone else can just eat dirt. That is the view of the Trump administration. We're feeling it right now in the Social Security Administration, but we're feeling it everywhere that Elon Musk goes with his magic chainsaw to fire people, to do it in ugly ways, to undermine the kind of obligations that we have passed here in Congress, to get rid of the consumer agency, to try to shut down the Department of Education. And why? It is all in service to government that works better for the rich and the powerful. This is all leading toward the Republicans, Elon Musk and Donald Trump and the Republicans here in Congress who want to push through a big tax giveaway that's going to cost $4.7 billion, go mostly to billionaires and billionaire corporations, and they want to pay for it on the backs of seniors, on the backs of little kids, on the backs of people with disabilities, on the backs of veterans, on the backs of just hardworking people all across this country. That is the ultimate battle. And this story at Social Security right now is just the most visible picture of what's going on.
Final quick question for you, someone who served on the Armed Services Committee, given what we know about this group chat leak and the Secretary of Defense texting war plans out on unsecured channels to a journalist, do you think Pete Hegseth, as Secretary of Defense, should resign?
If Pete Hegseth had even a sliver of self-respect and sense of honor, he would have already put his resignation on the president's desk. And if he's not willing to do that, then the president of the United States has a moral and, in my view, legal obligation to fire him.
Senator Elizabeth Warren, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.